This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Let's see. Let's get things moving. Thank you for dropping that info in the chat. I appreciate that. My name is Nisi, and I am actually a public health nurse. And I got involved with nonprofits. My first nonprofit was American Heart Association. And I loved the administrative development paperwork side of healthcare, and that usually meant nonprofit. And so that's kind of how I got into it. I am a consultant now. I still do some bedside nursing, but not much, just to kind of stay in compliance with my license. But I like to take on tasks and projects. And one of the projects that I've been working on with a couple of really great, amazing, talented friends is this "You Want to Start a Nonprofit, Don't" series, because everybody thinks that they want to start a nonprofit until they actually start a nonprofit and they're like, what was I thinking? Or they want to work for a nonprofit. And so obviously it's tongue in cheek because here we are, we're already in the midst of it, right? But it just kind of breaks down some of those things that maybe somebody didn't really tell you about. For this particular course, it's important because sometimes we do a development plan and we have to wear many hats. And so if you're wearing the developer hat, and if you're wearing the CEO hat and the financial officer hat, and like, how do you prioritize and what parts of a development plan do you initiate? And is your development plan the same as your organization's strategic plan? That kind of stuff. So we're going to kind of go into some of those things. There's a big chunk of the slides that I'm going to do a deep dive in, and there's a big chunk of the slides where I'm just going to kind of keep things a little light. And the reason that we want to keep it a little light is because, for the most part, most organizations, most people kind of have that part mastered, but they kind of fall weak when we start to get in the weeds of donor development and cultivation and stuff. Okay. All right. So let's keep it moving. So obviously, the first thing is you really want to assess your current donor database. Most people are like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to assess it, right? But the truth is, you really need to understand the characteristics of the people that you're asking to donate. You really need to figure out what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses. How are they going to show up? Where are they showing up? What's important to them and what's important to them as far as making a donation or a contribution to your organization. And then you want to figure out, are there any spaces to grow, right? One of the things that we see a lot is you have a donor that gives $25 a month by check and has done that for 15 years. And we don't do anything to grow that donor, right? We don't do anything to cultivate that donor. And so a lot of opportunities can get missed that way. And so we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So when we think about, our donors, we really want to meet them where they're at and then cultivate them to where we want the organization to go. So I just talked about that one donor that writes that check each month. Um, do we really want to ask him to give via text? Maybe not, but maybe we want to ask for $100 check instead of a $25 check, right? So figuring out where our donors are at, assessing what they're willing to do, trying to figure out if there's opportunities for growth that will be helpful to us. We all know, yeah, we want money no matter how it comes. But man, if it comes electronically and it's easy for us to document it, receive it, maybe a small little fee, it's much of a lighter lift than having to get a paper check and the process of getting that deposited and all of those things, right? So keeping that in mind as you're thinking about where your donors are and where you want them to. So, are you thinking about what it is that is important to your donors? If you've done a gala for the past, 10 years, do they still want a gala? Are they just coming because they feel like that's the way that they can contribute? Or is there a different way? Are your gala guests individuals that can switch to text to giving? I know me personally, if an organization is trying to raise funds, I would rather give them $100 to go straight into that account than give them $100 for them to only have $25 that they can have access to. So keep that in mind when you're, trying to cultivate events or opportunities to fundraise. Where are your donors at with giving? And sometimes it's just a quick question. I think a lot of nonprofits got asked this question during COVID when they couldn't have those in-person events. Like, well, now how are we supposed to fundraise? I promise you, more than half of your donors were happy that there was not an event, right? And they were happy to give a little bit more because they felt like, well, all of my money is contributing as opposed to 25% of it, after expenses and things like that. So kind of keep these in the back of your mind when you're thinking about how you're going to cultivate your donors or what means you're going to use when it's time to do fundraising. So when we're talking about setting clear and measurable goals, the thing that always comes to mind is if you have a benchmark and if you have the resources. Because even if you want to raise $1 million, if you've never raised $1 million before, you don't know how you're going to do it or how you're going to get there. And you don't know if you have the resources to raise the $1 million. So yeah, we want a SMART goal, but we really want to be realistic in our approach and understanding what resources that we have available to us. So I'm going to spend a little bit of space in these three: defining your objectives, establishing your targets and benchmarks, and then aligning it into your mission organization. You'd be surprised how many organizations want to raise funds for a group or program, but they already have a steady stream of funds coming in. So the resources that you're pulling to get funds for that program already exist, and you should probably be pulling it for something else. So here's some examples of some very specific objectives when we're talking about, what we want to develop as far as for donors. So increasing the number of recurring donors by 20% in the next fiscal year. My suggestion is this: if you don't have a benchmark established, establish a benchmark first. That's that $1 million ask, right? You don't know what it's going to take of your organization to get $1 million or what 20% will look like. Also, if you have a new initiative, the goal for that can be to establish the benchmark from that initiative, not so much to have a dollar or price point attached to it, because you don't know the efforts it will take. You don't know the hiccups that come along with it. So why set yourself up for, lack of success because you've never been in that space before? And I like things to be more specific than fiscal year, even though you might know what that date is for your organization. When you put an actual date in your planning, it changes somebody's mindset about it, right? So like when my kids were getting out of school for the summer, I was thinking, oh, we've got another month or so, right? Whereas the teachers were like, we have 3 Mondays left, right? It just kind of defines what we really have, the resources, the bandwidth that we really have. And it's not sitting in some like esoteric space for us. So instead of saying fiscal year, like if you do a regular calendar year, say December 31st of that year. So something like securing a major gift of $100,000. Okay, by 3 donors in the next 6 months. Okay, this starts to get that wishy-washy a little bit, right? Like, is one person giving 10,000, another person giving 2,000, the other person giving the rest of that? Then what does that look like? Who is it coming from? How are we getting it? It's better to have a smaller, more specific goal than it is to have a bigger, more grand goal, because there's so much space for error or lack of resources when it's such a big goal that you're trying to accomplish. I love words like enhance because enhance kind of is a fuzzy space, right? But you got to define what enhance means to your organization or to your mission. Because when we talk about enhanced donor retention, are we talking about how they give and the amount? Are we talking about the ease of giving? Are we talking about just the dollar amount? Again, try to be a little bit specific when you're talking about that. Okay, so acquiring 500 new donors. This sounds great, but if you don't have a plan for those 500 new donors, they will be a one and done. And then next year, you're going to be like, I don't know what happened to the 500 people we worked so hard to get. So maybe the goal is not 500 new donors. Maybe the goal is 200 new donors because you have the resources to cultivate 200 donors over the next 5 years, but you don't have the resources to cultivate 500 donors over the next couple of years, okay? So just kind of keep those things in mind. Also, when you're thinking about, a plan giving program, the $25 a month or whatever that looks like, do you have the bandwidth, the resources, the time, the energy to cultivate that giving program? Or are you just kind of throwing something up on a website that says, I'm going to give $100 a month because it pays for, tuition, or I'm going to give $50 a month because it pays for whatever that looks like in your space. So just be mindful when you're picking those specific objectives, for donor development, they're realistic enough so that you can help people be successful donors, right? Like when I give to an organization, I want to be a good giver. I want to be a good steward of the money that I'm giving. And you help them do that by setting those specific objectives ahead of time. My little slider keeps disappearing on me. There it goes. Sorry about that. Technology is working against me a little bit today. Come on. It's like it doesn't want to advance. I might have to take down so that it's easier to see. Let's see if I can do it this way. There we go. I'll do it this way. All right. So we talked about the importance of, if you don't already have a target, or if you've never done it before, establishing those benchmarks. So if you say you're going to increase your average donation by 50% compared to the previous year, if you've never had maybe a donor development person on staff, is that a realistic percentage, right? You might hit 75% because now you have the resource or the bandwidth to increase that donation amount. But what happens is it's going to look like, crap the next year because you went from, 10 to 75 because you got a new person. And then that person's numbers are going to go to like 50 because there wasn't any effort or a benchmark established. So even with your benchmark, you might want to move it from, instead of saying, increase the average donation amount by 15%, say, create and establish a position or role to manage an increase of XYZ for the next 3 years, right? So that means that first year you'll have an influx, it'll be much higher because obviously no work has been done to it. And then the years following it, it might look a little bit different, but give people good expectations. We don't want that new development person to come in and like hit great high numbers the first year because no work has been done into it. And then the next 2 years, it looks like it failed because the numbers are lower. The numbers are just more realistic because she's doing the work on a steady pace as opposed to introducing a new initiative. This one, secure at least 5 new corporate sponsors for an upcoming event. I get it. I understand it. What is the work? What is the resource that goes into this? Is this your first event? If it's your first event, is it easier for you to get people to sponsor? Maybe, maybe not, depends on your donors. If this is the 10th year that you've done the same program, are you struggling to get people to kind of be in that space with you, right? What does that potentially look like for you? So always take into consideration your resources, your bandwidth, the expectation. Are you a 2 or 3 person team? Are you a 50-person team? And how are you going to manage having these numbers be success? Don't increase the target if you've never had the benchmark before. I can't stress that enough. It just sets everybody up for failure. You might think, oh, 10% is great. And you might do it the first year and you might have 70%. And then the next year you drop and you're trying to figure out what happened. This is what happens when you do that. So another thing that I see all the time is organizations having these great development goals that are just not in alignment with their organization's mission, right? So my friend Leslie, who's also a nonprofit consultant, she always uses the example of your nonprofit might want to rescue green dogs, right? And you might be like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to rescue these green dogs in my, community. Are there any green dogs to rescue? Do the green dogs need to be rescued? Do the green dogs have enough resources already, right? So you always have to, anytime you're doing any planning, development focus, donor focus, you have to ask yourself, if the work that we're doing is to rescue these green dogs, then does it match? Does it match our development plan? Does it match our strategic plan? Because if no green dogs need to be rescued, then where's your mission sitting at now? What are you going to be doing now? If you've rescued all of the green dogs, now what do you do? Right? So be mindful that whatever goals or initiatives that you have in your development plan, that they're in alignment with your mission, but also fluid enough to say, okay, our goal is to rescue 100 green dogs. If we have rescued 100 green dogs in a year, then we've hit the mark. What do you do if you've rescued 100 green dogs in the first 3 months? Now, what are you going to do with your plan? Now, what are you going to do with your time, your efforts, your energy, right? And so having an alignment to your mission kind of keeps you focused, because then you can say, well, if we have rescued the 100 dogs in the first 3 months, we're going to spend the rest of the year building a reserve, right? We're going to build bank. We're going to invest in better kennels. We're going to invest in different types of resources, whatever that looks like. Bring your donors along for the journey with you. They want to know that you've succeeded in rescuing those 100 dogs. So if you rescue the 100 dogs in the first 3 months, but you don't have an annual event until month 9, they're going to be like, why are we doing this? Because we already did what we said we were going to do. Give them the opportunity to be engaged in some new objectives, right? Give them the opportunity to say, we have meet our goal. And because of our values and principles, now we're also going to help rescue blue dogs, right? Or whatever that looks like in your nonprofit world. But always stay in alignment with your mission. Also, be ethical in your fundraising practices. Be mindful of how you post things. We all know we can't really use the word raffle when we're talking about, fundraising. Be mindful of what you can and can't do, or what space you take up. If you have funds that are coming in, I see this a lot. If you donate $100, that $100 goes towards dog food. You basically have publicly restricted those funds, right? So be mindful in how you're saying what you're saying, because if I'm a donor and I give $100, my expectation is you're going to pay for dog food. But if you've gone in and you've had to pay for plumbing, that's not where I said my $100 was going to go. So be careful that you are, sticking true to your word. Watch what you post on social media. Watch what you say in videos. Always keep a cluster so that you can use the funds however you see fit or need to use them. I'm going to check the chat really quick. And then let's see, no questions. Okay, perfect. No questions. I got some other folks joining. I'll just real quick let them in. All right. So here's the part where it starts to fall off when we talk about a donor development plan. Most organizations know, here's what we need to keep the lights on, right? Here's how much money we need. Here's the areas that we can improve to keep those lights on. But when they start to talk to their donors, it falls short, right? Because your donor needs to feel like you're talking to them specifically, or they'll be like, well, they're not talking to me because I talk about rescuing green dogs and they're talking about rescuing blue dogs, right? So you really have to be mindful of donor segmentation. This means that for each segment of your donors, you're going to have a plan to cultivate them. You're going to have a way to get them from the $25 monthly check to the $500 digital donation, right? Or whatever that looks like in your nonprofit space. This also means that what you expect of them and what they expect of you is going to look different. So how many segments do you have? How many times do you, take apart the individuals or the types of donors that you have? Clearly, the more direct of a service you provide, the easier it is to segment and cultivate that one segment. But if you have multiple programs, if you have multiple services, each of those things could be speaking to a different segment of your donor database. And how are you going to personally cultivate a plan for each segment? This is where I want to say maybe 9 out of 10 people fall off because they just send the same message. They send the same newsletter. They send the same social media post to a very, global audience, which means you're not really talking to anybody directly. So what does it mean when we're talking about, creating a cultivation plan for each donor? The first space you want to look at is how you're communicating. If you are an organization, like some organizations are 150 years old, right? And so that will tell you that many of their donors are probably much more mature in age. And when you have donors that are much more mature in age, sometimes what happens is the way they give, how they communicate looks different. So your much more mature audience might be on, let's say, Facebook or LinkedIn, whereas your newer donors, right, the ones that you want to come in to bring innovation, to bring extra resources, to bring new connections, they're on Instagram. Well, what you say on LinkedIn versus what you say on Instagram, two different things, right? You have some folks that don't respond well to emails, but do great with text messages. Some that would rather get, a letter in the mail than an email. You really have to figure out how you're going to engage with each segment of your donors. Okay. You also have to figure out how you're going to do storytelling. Younger donors are more about impact, right? We want to know that the $100 or $5,000 that I gave is going to have impact in the mission, and the beneficiaries are going to actually see that impact. Mature donors are more concerned about brand awareness, kind of growth, stability, succession planning. Like, what are you going to do? Because, all of us are getting older. So who's coming up? Are we training them up the way we want them trained up? So the storytelling and the messaging that you provide each of them gonna look different. Okay. And then how you engage with them is going to look completely different too. I was at an event and a majority, it was a women's event. A majority of the women there were, let's say, 45 plus, right? And one of the things, it was a shared event. So we had different organizations from all over the city. And some of the organizations were much younger women, like in their early 20s, early 30s kind of thing. And the older women were like, we want you guys here. We want you guys to, participate and engage when we do events and activities, but we know that it's a demographic that we don't see. And a younger lady stood up and said, well, I found out about this because my mom shared the Facebook post, but I'm not on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. And the older woman said, well, I guess you just won't see the events that we do. Well, what's the point of wanting the engagement, wanting the succession planning, wanting the innovation, if we're not going to be in the spaces that our donors are going to be in, right? So if you have donors that like to give back, do you have volunteer opportunities? They rather give sweat equity than finances. Do you have those opportunities available? Do you have a way to show the impact of them giving back and what that looks like so that it resonates with them personally? And then you have to do this for each segment of donors. This is where I'm going to stress, and again and again, most nonprofits fall off because they group globally all their donors into one, maybe two segments, and they just speak to a general population, a general group of people. When you do this, the person that you need to convert, to write the check, to pay, online, they feel like the message isn't for them. They feel like your mission is not in alignment with them, right? It should feel like a warm birthday invitation. It should not feel like some stranger just invited me to a party and I don't know who they are. And if you make it feel like a warm invitation, guess what they're going to do? They're going to spend more time on that gift. They're going to take more time to be available and be present. But if it just feels awkward and weird, or they feel like every time I see you, you're asking me for money and you don't really care about my opinion and I don't really know what the impact is, it's going to be a wash, right? You're going to lose that opportunity to cultivate that relationship with that donor. All right, if it'll let me progress. All right. So when we think about stewardship and recognition, again, this can be a cultural thing and it looks different for different segments. Some people want the recognition, right? They want to be put on Facebook as somebody that gave. They want to be acknowledged at a gala. They want to have, their name on the website or, whatever that looks like. And some people just want to be good stewards, right? They just want to know that the money that I gave showed up and did the thing that it was supposed to do. And a quick thank you once I give is good enough. But you don't know that unless you are taking the time to understand and cultivate those donors, individual groups of segments, right? So one of the things that I think most nonprofits do is thank you notes, like, handwritten thank you notes. This is great. This is a great opportunity. If you are, let's say, a green nonprofit, sending out a paper thank you note probably goes against your mission, right? Because the whole point is to be more green. So keep that in mind as you are acknowledging and recognizing people for the work that they do. Also, give them the opportunity to be good stewards, like tell them the information on the annual report. Don't just shove an annual report down their face. A lot of people don't even know what it means. They're not sure what they're supposed to do with it. That doesn't really display where their money went or how they made an impact into that organization. Sometimes they just want to feel appreciated. Are there other ways that you can show appreciation to your donors? This is part of cultivating those donors, making sure that they're engaged. One of my favorite things to do is a lot of nonprofits have a segment of their donors that are on Facebook. Facebook does a very free fundraiser for their birthdays. And I always suggest, make sure that your donors that are on Facebook know that they can do a fundraiser on your behalf during their birthday. However, do not send them a happy birthday email and in that same email say, and now fundraise for us, right? So what you could do as part of your strategy is 60 days prior to that person's birthday month, send them an email or two letting them know, hey, did you know Facebook does fundraisers? 60 days is enough time for them to kind of forget about it, but still remember. And then when their birthday comes, send them just a happy birthday. You should never be asking for something and thanking them for something at the same time. It's either I thank you, I love you, or it's an ask, but you don't want to combine the two, okay? Because people will feel used immediately. But if I send that note that says Facebook does fundraising on your birthday 60 days ahead, that kind of gives me enough time in between to say, oh yeah, that's right, it is. Facebook will have the pop-up that says, would you like to do a fundraiser for your favorite nonprofit? They're going to remember that you sent them that card talking about the opportunity to fundraise. But again, are your fans on Facebook? Is this how they like to give? Does this give them the opportunity to recognize you and be a good steward to your nonprofit? And does this give them the recognition that they need to feel appreciated and acknowledged when they're giving? And then always be ready to adjust. There's a big P word in nonprofit, and it is not profit, it is pivot. Like you've always got to figure out how you're going to pivot. I think most nonprofits, when COVID hit, if you did not have fluidity in your nonprofit, if you were rigorous with your goals, if you were rigorous with your plans, you were held back. If you were innovative, if you were ready to pivot, if you were more fluid as culturally within your nonprofit, it was much easier for you to figure out how to be effective in your mission without losing too much traction, because none of us saw that coming, right? So being ready to adjust is a huge benefit. Um, a while ago, a couple of times now, Facebook and Instagram went down. Well, if you do all of your fundraising on Facebook and Facebook more than, a day or two, or maybe it goes down the day you were planning to do peer-to-peer giving online, what's your backup plan? How are you going to still cultivate and reach those people and get those funds in the door? Okay. So when we talk about, some of the demographics and how we want to approach people, some of the things that you need to look for are, who is your primary big giver, right? Who's going to approve the writing of that big check, that $50,000 check, that $100,000 check? Because it's not just the organization. Somebody in that organization, that funder organization, has to say, yes, we want to be in alignment with their nonprofit. Who are they, right? Because sometimes we just speak to funders, and sometimes we need to speak to the people that are managing the funding organizations. Where do they live? What do they do? What's important to them? What strategies are we going to put in place so that they hear and see us and can connect immediately? This is why most nonprofits have done or experienced a golf tournament. Statistically speaking, it is an older white male that is leading a lot of these funding nonprofits, and statistically speaking, older white men enjoy golf. There's no coincidence in that, right? It happened for a reason. We're going to meet you where you're at. We're going to do the thing that you love to do. Well, what if your person doesn't like golf? What if they like boats? What if they like fishing? Is there opportunity in that space? You also want to consider, those, different types of beliefs and interest. If you have an organization that has, a certain type of belief, are you asking for funding from an organization that doesn't have the same beliefs as you? Or vice versa? Are you asking for funding and you don't have the same beliefs as that organization? Be in alignment with that, because then it's much easier to walk the same path than it is to try and figure out, okay, if we are a substance use disorder organization, right? We treat people that have substance use disorder. Do we want to sponsor from an alcoholic beverage organization? Maybe not. Or maybe yes. Here's why. Because what's most important for that, commercial beverage company than to be in alignment with somebody that says, we want to keep people safe. We want to take care of people. We want you guys to use this in, the right appropriate ways. So maybe it is, maybe it's a compliment. But you got to figure out who's in charge of making those decisions. Is that important to them and their organization? And what will that feel like to your donors? So if we accept $100,000 check from Michelob, I don't know beer. I'm sorry. I don't even, what's another one? Budweiser, right? I think, or Bud Light. If we accept a check from Bud Light, how are our donors going to feel about that? Will they be like, this doesn't add up, I don't feel good about it? Or will they feel like, you know what? It's good that we're partnering because we can complement each other, right? And so you have to take that into consideration. What's important to them? What are their beliefs as donors? Is that $100,000 check from Bud Light more important than potentially the $100,000 you would get from your donors? What does that look like for you? And then here's the one that is always trippy. What is their behavior, their giving behavior? Some people are like, I'm going to give on December 31st so I can get the tax write-off. That's it. Don't approach me about a luncheon. Don't approach me about a gala. Don't ask me to give anything. Thank you, Patrick. I was not sure which company was which. Obviously, clearly, I don't consume because I couldn't think of any. But what's their pattern of giving? Are they a once a year? Are they the guy that does the $25 check each month? Or are they waiting for the event? Are they waiting for the gala? Are they waiting for the luncheon? Typically, you have big givers during a luncheon or gala because they want the recognition. If you ask someone to be a sponsor and you just throw their name up on a little poster or, in the presentation, was that recognition enough for them? Have you asked them? A lot of times we put these sponsor packages together and we're like, what do we say? We'll put you on our website, we'll put you on our social media, we'll thank you during the presentation. We might even give you 2 to 3 minutes to talk during the event. Does that matter to them? Maybe they want to be part of your annual impact report. But take the time to figure out in their giving behaviors what's important to them and how they give, so that okay, they don't care about being on social media. They don't care about being on our social media page. Most organizations that give don't care about that. I'm sorry to let you know, but don't make that a prize for supporting, right? Most organizations, they give a certain way because, one, there's recognition involved, there's alignment involved, and there's also impact involved. So if you can match alignment, recognition, and impact, people are more likely to give or change up their giving behaviors. Okay? I'm going to pause really quickly and ask if there are any questions. And you can just unmute.
Hi, it's Patrick.
Hey.
How soon would we be getting the deck on this? This is great stuff.
This afternoon.
Oh, you're the best.
Yeah, this afternoon.
Very cool. All right,
Yeah.
that was my only question. You did great.
That was easy. Thank you,
It
Patrick.
aligns a lot with the sales side of things. When you look at this, it's almost like you separate your clients into A, B, and C targets. You have to know them, know their age, know a lot about them to come at what product or proposal to bring to them. And then on this side, it's the exact same thing. It's just on the donor side of it. It's
still a sale, right? It's still a
it absolutely is. I agree. Yeah. I think it's great stuff. I appreciate that.
Oh, of course, absolutely, definitely. And also, oh, go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to say, I don't know the ethics of this, but I would really like our whole board to see this presentation because we're a startup and should have done this 2 years ago before we started our nonprofit. But okay. We're up to our eyeballs in it. I don't know if you're available, for a fee to come speak to them, or the legalities of us making an arrangement to let us use this deck, but for that, because I don't want to steal it, but offline maybe we can talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I send all the stuff and the recording today, I'll make sure my contact information is in there. So if you want to reach out to me, whether it's a quick 15-minute chat or you need me to come out, we can definitely support you that way. The donor development is tough, right? This is why we named the thing, you want to start a nonprofit, don't, because most of us are, like you said, up to our eyeballs and stuff before we realized, oh, we did that wrong for the past 2 years. Okay, great. Now we got to figure out what we're going to do to get back on track. The other thing is there's this illusion when you have a nonprofit that you have to have all the things in place, right? You have to save all the green dogs and all the blue dogs and all the yellow dogs. What if what you really do is just provide food for dogs, right? So sometimes we want to, provide this very massive mission, but think about all the people that are already providing that mission and what it is that they need. And maybe you can scale down your nonprofit for the first 2 years to be more beneficial to serve other nonprofits. Like there's so much space. I think that illusion of what a nonprofit should be and maintain is very hard to manage and keep up if you don't have like at least 10 or 15 people like helping you, right? And so what do you do to scale back, to step back and say, we have too much, right? We have too much on our plate. And what do we do to manage it, fix it, get in alignment with our mission so that we can, make different decisions? So, all right. So when we talk about motivators, I might not care about green dogs, or I might not care about dog food, but what's really important to me is that you guys have immunizations for your dogs, right? Or you can provide surgeries for dogs, or special need dogs, or dogs that provide different type of services like service dogs. That's what's going to motivate me. That's what I'm interested in. But you have to figure that out. How are you surveying your donors to figure out what's really important? Because most people, they're only in alignment with your mission a little bit, right? Okay, we're saving green dogs and we do 5 surgeries a year. Well, I might only be concerned about the 5 surgeries that we do a year. I might not care about all the other stuff that you do. And this is really beneficial to you, because if you survey your donors and you figure out they don't care about all the other stuff, that all of them really care about are the surgeries, instantly you can scale back, right? You can scale back, you can be more specific, you can decrease the number of segments you have in your donor database, right? And you can speak to them directly, as opposed to speaking to the donors that are motivated by dog food, speaking to the donors that are motivated by collars, speaking to the donors that are motivated by, dog houses or whatever. Now you've really scaled, and you did so allowing your donors to lead in that movement, which is a very empowering thing, because a lot of times people give, they don't know where the money goes, they don't know how it's spent, they don't really know the impact. But if you let them lead your nonprofit, it'll be so much easier to nurture and develop and grow that segment. Okay. Also, how are you going to maximize their loyalty? I remember my first kind of inkling, and I didn't even realize it until after the fact. My grandmother used to get these stickers, address stickers from American Heart Association. And what they used to do is they used to send this thick pack of stickers with a donate envelope in there, right? And what they were expecting was, you write us a check and you get to keep the stickers. And so that a lot of people were like, oh, well, that's great, because now you see all of these American Heart Association return address labels all over the place, because that was how they engaged their donors, right? Now, most people don't even look at junk mail, right? So how are you going to do that? How are you going to engage them now? Tours, do you do tours? If you give a certain level, is there like lunch with the CEO, right? What are you going to do so that they feel loyal to you? Because if you're doing it, there's probably 100 nonprofits that are doing it too. And what makes you so special? And I don't mean that in a mean way, but why should I give to you and not another one? Do I feel valued? Do I feel understood? Do I feel like you guys get what it is that I want and I get what you guys need? How are you going to build that loyalty? Most nonprofits don't spend a lot of space here, and they wonder why people are transactional givers, right? So transactional givers would be, I had an event, I know who you guys are, what you do, I'll give, but I'll never look at you again until you approach me for that same event next year, right? If you create loyalty, what you do is you create advocates, and then the load that you have to carry isn't as heavy. So if I take my time and I cultivate 10 loyal people to talk about, be excited about, be engaged with my nonprofit, those 10 people will engage other people to do the same thing. And now, instead of trying to cultivate 20 people, I just cultivate my 10, and my 10 will get me 100, right? So be mindful of how you're going to make people feel over time. Don't just love them when they give the sponsorship, during your event, and then not talk to them until 9 months later when you're planning the next year's event. How are you going to make them feel loved and be loyal all year long, right? And that's part of that cultivation. So don't forget, you need to know how to allocate your resources. This one is tough. Most organizations, they put so much energy and effort into events, if they were to allocate that time differently, they probably could get a different result. There was a speaker that does nonprofit consulting that I went to, this was years ago, and she said the training was about, where you get your money from, like how you get your money from donors. And she said, and this sticks with me all the time, do you want a check or do you want an event? Both are important, right? Because with a check, you have direct funds to go wherever it is that you need them. With an event, you have brand awareness, you have engagement, you have recognition, you have all of those things, which is still important. But which one do you have the resources for, right? Do you have the resources to host a luncheon, or do you have the resources for one person on your team to spend 6 hours a month nurturing relationships to get a check? Figure out how to be really efficient with getting the thing that you need the most. Sometimes you need the event more than anything else because you need to acknowledge the people that you've collaborated with. You need to acknowledge the work that's being done by your staff, by your board, by your donors, right? You need the brand awareness. A lot of times we do events like this because we want to invite new people into our circle. But make sure you're including this concept, this portion of it, when you are creating your donor development plan, okay? All right. So whenever I think about cultivation, I always think about a farmer. A farmer just not go out and just throw seeds on the ground and expect stuff to grow. This is what we do as nonprofits all the time. We're like, well, if we put it on social media, people will donate. We put a donate button on our website, people will give. And there's no cultivation. And then we don't understand why we don't have loyal donors, right? So how are you going to cultivate it? How are you going to tie in what motivates them? How are you going to make it personalized? This is why when we see nonprofits that are saying, oh, we have 13 different programs, and they're so proud of the 13 programs that they have, for those of us that understand donor development, we're like, that's a whole lot of work, right? That's a whole lot of work to get what you need to cultivate the donor for each program. And so it's really important to have these strategies tailored to each segment. So if I have a young person that's digital or high tech, or motivated by impact or engagement, like being able to come out and be hands-on. If I don't have any of those opportunities available, should this person be part of my donor development? Or should I change gears and find ways to cultivate this person? If I know that there's a high return on that investment, I'm going to shift gears because I want space for that person. I want that person or that segment of persons to be part of our organization. This is important when you're thinking about board diversity, right? If you look to the right and left of you, do all of your board members look and sound like you? Do they all come from kind of the same background? Because most people that are big givers, that are engaged givers, that are loyal givers, they're looking at your diversity. They're looking at, do you have representation of the people that you serve on your board? Not just as advisory, but are they also being there to make decisions? Like, is it a voting member of your board? Are they there just to provide information? Like, what does that look like? Everybody needs to have purpose. So each segment, they need to have purpose, and you cultivate that purpose. Your board members need to have purpose, and they cultivate that, and you cultivate that purpose for them. So your development plan has so much stuff in it, but a lot of it is really just creating a strategy for each segment that you are, helping to manage. Let's see. So one size does not fit all, right? And it's really important that you understand who the person is. We call them personas because it's easier to kind of group it that way, right? So typically they're similar demographics and race, ethnicity, age, income, location, giving behaviors or patterns. And then within that segment, there are segments, right? So you might have that one persona, but there might be a split or divide. Usually it comes into like impact or what's important to that person. So you might have one that's there to help, save dogs and give them dog food, but one wants organic food and one wants like regular kibble. So you might have segments and segments. This doesn't mean that you have to speak to each segment every single time, separately, but it does mean you need to pay attention. The easiest way to do that is if you're sending out a newsletter, every newsletter that you send out should have something clickable that provides you with intel about the person reading the newsletter. So if I send out a newsletter about the dogs that we're saving in Texas, and I say, if you want to learn more about the organic food that we're giving, click here. If you want to learn more about the dog collars that were created by this organization, click here. What I'm doing is I'm creating additional segments so that when there's an opportunity to talk more about organic food, I already know the persona of the people that want to talk about organic food, right? And I can just send something directly to them. If my passion is organic foods for dogs and you send me something about organic foods, tips, information, resource, coupon, whatever that looks like, I'm going to feel like they get me. They understand me. And I'm going to give more. I'm probably going to give more than I would have had you not sent that directly to me, right? And then how are we going to cultivate that? My journey as one persona might look different than someone else's journey. Sometimes you have to figure out, okay, if this person's been giving $25 a month for the past 3 years, can we get this person to go to $50 a month? Or is it possible to get this person to go to $100 a month, right? What does that look like? Figure out what their journey is so you are not stagnant in the dollar amounts that you are receiving. There should always be an increase. There should always be should always have a goal of, in sales we call upsell, right? So this is why when you go to get your oil change, you're like, did you know you need to replace your filter? We're like, I don't know what a filter is. Change my oil, get me in and out. If people feel like you're upselling them that way, they're most likely not going to give. So that means that you got to take them on a journey that says, what you did was impactful. That $25 meant so much to us, and we can't thank you enough for doing that. And happy birthday and happy holidays. And here's a success story. Oh, and here's another opportunity to go from 25 to 50 if you'd like. If not, no worries, we understand. If that person feels loved and recognized, they're going to go to 50, right? If they can, they're going to go to 50. A lot of times we miss those opportunities. We're like, they're giving 25 a month, we're not even going to worry about it. If somebody is willing to give you $25 a month for multiple years, they're most likely willing to give you a little bit more than that, even if it's not every month, but once in a while. And then I think a lot of places do good with monitoring, evaluating. They have their dashboard, their KPIs, right? They set their goals in the beginning. We want to raise $200,000 this year. We want to increase, donors by 10%. They kind of have those things. So I didn't want to spend too much space here, but just to say, be ready to continuously improve how you're going to develop. Is your organization comfortable with saying, at the 6-month mark, we're going to evaluate if these, strategies are effective or important to us anymore? Because it's okay to move the goal line. It's okay to create a better or different strategy. You don't want to hold on to a strategy because you wrote it down someplace for a whole year when you realize it's not working in the first 3 months. And I think a lot of nonprofits like hold tight to their development plan and they don't make it a fluid living thing, which is what it really should be. Also, start to foster a culture of philanthropy. I think for a lot of people, when they hear philanthropy or a philanthropist, they think big checks, right? And really, it's just about giving from what you have, from where you're at. And when you look at it like that, as opposed to this sponsorship is, or in order to be recognized, you have to give this amount. When you start to just have this culture of giving, it might be time, it might be other resources, it might be making phone calls, it might be signing thank you cards for other people that have given. How are you engaging and empowering the people that are already advocates for your mission? Have you just kind of forgotten about them? If you think about your staff, right? And I've worked with organizations that have 1,000+ people, and they do internal fundraising once a year, like a day of giving kind of thing, and they don't really thank their staff. And sometimes there is this kind of authoritative burden that you better give because we need to be at 100% employee giving. Does that make me want to be a giver? Just because I work for you does not mean that I'm a giver to your nonprofit strategy, your donor development, but it should be. Because if I'm working for you, I'm probably going to be a really good advocate to raise funds for you. And if I feel like you're good stewards with your money, I'm probably going to do more, give more, or recruit other people to do the same thing. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're cultivating your donor development plan. Create philanthropy as a culture, right? We give because we give. It's the right thing to do. It supports our mission, but don't have the expectation that people should just automatically give because we have a fundraising day. Figure out what that looks like for the next person. So baby steps, right? We first talked about how we're going to assess. Where are we at right now? Do we have, in our business development plan, do we have 18 different goals and objectives that we're trying to reach? And then do we have the expectation that our development person or development plan is going to create all of those, wins on that, business objective? That's not really fair. So I'll give you an example. If your objective is to raise $1,000, not all of that needs to sit in development, right? It can sit in other spaces. Figure out what those spaces are. If your goal is to increase new donors by 10%, some of that can sit in marketing, right? Because they're responsible for that communications component of it. Your development person or the development role is to create strategies and opportunities, right? And then other people are implementing some of those things. So there's some things in business that kind of infiltrate all the spaces. Finances is one of them, right? No matter what you do, it's tied to finance. It's either costing us money or making us money. It just sits in no matter what hat you wear. Marketing and communication or brand awareness. You might have a department for it, but it sits everywhere with all of us. So if I am wearing a not my nonprofit branded shirt and I am out someplace being inappropriate, I am poorly representing my brand and my nonprofit, right? So it sits with all of us, even though the marketing and communications team is responsible for it. So much is true when we talk about development. A lot of times the person that does development is also in charge of the grant. Well, the grant really is dependent on the program, right? So is the program manager leading it? Do they have the resources that they need? Because I can't ask for more funding to support a program that's being poorly run or that has bad numbers. So just because the development, the outline, the goals sit under that development person or that role doesn't mean that it's not the responsibility of someone else. So when you're creating this plan, figure out what are the baby steps, not just for the development person or that group, but for marketing, right? If we want 1,000 new donors by the end of the fiscal year, the person in development is not going to get 1,000 new people. You know who's going to get 1,000 new people? The people in marketing and communication. They're going to get 1,000 new people. So how are you going to work together with that team to reach that goal? Okay. Same thing is true for like grants and other things like that. So just kind of keep those things in mind. Really quickly, I'm going to show you, this is kind of an outline of what you're going to get as well. I'm going to change it into like a regular document so that you kind of have an outline of what to do. This is all the stuff that we talked about all day, but I'm going to put it in like a spreadsheet so you can like, okay, we talked about this, we figured this out, so it looks a little bit better. But I like the visual of this because it says a lot. Like there's a lot of words and letters on that screen because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And so always go back to what are my baby steps in this, right? What things can I do from this huge, massive plan in order to create and cultivate the donors that I need? Maybe I don't need to have 5 goals. Maybe I need to have 2. Maybe I need to have one big one and kind of 3 dependencies under that big one, right? It doesn't need to be cookie cutter. It needs to make sense to your organization, considering your resources, considering your bandwidth, considering, your understanding and knowledge of donor development. All of those things matter. Don't create a plan, or my favorite thing that we do in nonprofit world is somebody's like, oh yeah, I have this really great plan. Here, have a copy of it. And we're like, okay, we can do this. And you can't do that. You can't copy paste a donor development plan. As much as we try, that's one of those spaces that you can't copy paste. You have to pick and choose what's appropriate for your group or your nonprofit so that you can be, successful and not feel like, well, that was a fail, and have to start over or feel defeated, which is the worst, or hire somebody with really, great expectations, but not a good plan for them to follow. I will open it up. I think did I run out of time? Yes, I did. Sorry about that. I will open it up. If you have questions, I'll be more than happy to answer over the next couple minutes so that we can connect, but I will it takes about an hour to download the recording. I don't know why, but it takes about an hour to download the recording. Once that's done, I'll send everything back to you guys in an email. You'll get a link and a password and all that good stuff. Any questions?
Hi, my name is Daphne. Truly enjoyed the presentation. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So I know that we're going into the AI phase of nonprofit. And so I have been using it to assist me, not to use that actual generated answer that they give, but it has been a very helpful guidance in helping me make a very good plan. And so I just wanted to share that. And again, your presentation was excellent.
Awesome. I am a fan of AI. When you start from a white space, right? Like a white page and nothing's on it, that is actually traumatizing. Right? Because you're like, I don't even know where to go with that or what to do with that. So I'm a huge fan of AI. I just say, don't copy paste, right? So
right.
Start filling the void and then really cultivate. So we call it prompt engineering. And so like your first thing might be, what are 20 things I can do in a donor development plan to be successful? And then you'll get the 20 and then you'll see 8. And then say, can you expand on these and allow them to expand? Can you expand more? Can you regenerate a different response? Like you want to keep going so that you can kind of get the most information. I will tell you the way that AI works is that it's conversational, right? So if I just met you at like a nonprofit networking event and I said, hi, my name is Nisi and I'm a nonprofit consultant, you kind of would have an idea of who I am and what I might do. But if I said I specialize in these areas, then you're going to have more information to use to have a conversation with me, right? That's how AI works. So are you using ChatGPT or?
Yes.
Okay,
I use that one and I was introduced to another one because I'm like catching all of the AIs for nonprofit webinars. And so let me see, I think they gave one and I don't have my notes.
That's
anyway, it was another one dang, I can't think of it. And I did take my Predigen today. But anyway, I can't think of the name, but it was another one that they gave out in access to use. So I'll be going back between the two.
Yeah, I love Chat GPT because it's heavily based off of conversation. And when you're new to prompt engineering, which is what it's called when you use it, if you just like relax and don't talk to it like a robot, but like talk to it or type to it like a person, the results and the information that you get will be better for you, right? And you'll be able to like really understand, oh, okay, I got it kind of thing. So, but yeah, continue to use it. It's a great tool. Oh, cool. I love, can you see my thing? I have mine right now, Patrick, so.
Nice. I'm the new business development guy there, and I'm
Whoa.
just surfing and looking, and I used to work with someone named Angela Fields, and I was like, "Is that Angela Fields from RentPath?" like, yeah, no, it's not, different one. But I that's what we do, and you guys do a great job. TechSoup does a great job getting those out to bridge the internet divide.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
that's our mission.
definitely. I can't stress, yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, good stuff.
So you'll be seeing more of me. I'm hoping everywhere.
Cool, sounds good,
I appreciate your help, and I might reach out to you in the near future, and thank you for your time in this meeting. It's awesome.
You're welcome, Any more questions? All right, well, you guys will get the email, and the email will have the link to the recording. And then you guys will also get, I'm gonna change that last slide that had all the outline. I'm gonna change it into a like a spreadsheet thing, so you guys can have that. So it's just an easier read, but you'll get the PowerPoint, the outline, and the recording. All right. That you guys have an amazing day. I'm not sure where you're at, but it's hot here in San Antonio. We've got a heat advisory, so I'm gonna go drink some water.
Oh, well, you're not too far. I'm in Houston.
Okay, yeah, it's hot here. All right, y'all have a great one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.